Imagine you are a sailor in 1718, the fog is thick, and the air smells of salt and rotting wood. Suddenly, a massive ship emerges from the mist, the Queen Anne's Revenge. But it's not the cannons that freeze your blood, it's the man standing on the deck. He looks like a demon straight from the pits of hell. Thick black smoke swirls around his face. His beard is braided with slow-burning fuses, glowing red in the dark. He carries 6 pistols strapped to his chest. This is Edward Teach, but the world knows him by a much darker name, Blackbeard. For over 3 centuries, Blackbeard has been the ultimate symbol of piracy. We've seen him in movies, games, and books, but who was the man behind the smoke? Was he a bloodthirsty monster, or a brilliant psychological strategist who conquered the seas without firing a single shot? Today, we are diving deep into the golden age of piracy to uncover the truth about the most feared man in the Atlantic. To understand the monster, we have to look at the man. Edward Teach wasn't born a pirate. Most historians believe he started as a privateer during Queen Anne's War. He was a legal mercenary, hired by the British Crown to raid French and Spanish ships. He learned the art of naval warfare from the best. But when the war ended in 1713, thousands of sailors were left unemployed. They had the skills, they had the hunger, and they had no masters. Teach saw an opportunity. He didn't just want to survive, he wanted to reign. In 1716, he joined the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold. Teach quickly proved himself to be exceptionally intelligent and physically imposing. He stood over 6 feet tall, a giant for that era. He wasn't just another thug with a cutlass. He was a natural leader who understood one thing perfectly: fear is more powerful than steel. While other pirates relied on brute force, Teach began crafting an image that would make surrender the only logical option for his victims. This was the birth of the persona, the heavy coat, the wide-brimmed hat, and that legendary, terrifying beard. Every king needs a throne, and every legendary pirate needs a fortress on the water. For Edward Teach, that fortress was a French slave ship called La Concorde. In November 1717, near the island of St. Vincent, Teach and his crew intercepted the massive vessel. The French were exhausted, diseased, and terrified. They surrendered almost instantly. Teach didn't just take the gold, he took the ship. He renamed it the Queen Anne's Revenge, and he turned it into the most dangerous weapon in the Atlantic. This wasn't a standard pirate boat. Teach added 40 cannons to its decks. To put that in perspective, most merchant ships carried only a handful of light guns. With 40 cannons, he could sink almost anything that crossed his path. But Teach's true genius was his understanding of human psychology. He knew that if his ship looked terrifying enough, he wouldn't even have to fire those cannons. The sight of the black sails and the smell of sulfur from his fuses was enough to make captains hand over their keys. Teach began a reign of terror that targeted the colonial trade routes. But he wasn't just a chaotic killer, he ran his crew like a corporation. Every man had a vote, every man had a share of the loot. And if a sailor was injured in battle, the company paid him disability benefits from the common chest. This was a radical democracy in an age of absolute monarchs. It's why sailors from all over the world flocked to join his fleet. In May 1718, Blackbeard pulled off his most audacious stunt. He didn't just rob a ship, he held a whole city hostage. He sailed into the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, and blocked the entrance. For nearly a week, no ship could enter or leave. What was his ransom? Gold, jewelry? No. He demanded a chest of medicine. His crew was suffering from syphilis and other diseases. By threatening to burn the city to the ground, he forced the governor to hand over the medical supplies. It was a bold, arrogant, and brilliant move. After the blockade of Charleston, Blackbeard was at the height of his power. But he knew the British Navy was closing in. He needed an exit strategy. In a move that shocked his crew, he intentionally ran the Queen Anne's Revenge aground. Was it an accident, or was he getting rid of a ship that was too famous to hide? He abandoned most of his men, kept the best loot for himself, and sailed to North Carolina to do the unthinkable. He surrendered. Teach accepted a royal pardon from Governor Charles Eden. On paper, Edward Teach was no longer a pirate. He was a reformed citizen. But the Reformation was a facade. Teach and Governor Eden had a secret deal. Teach would continue to raid ships, and the governor would look the other way in exchange for a cut of the profits. For a few months, the most feared pirate in the world lived the life of a country gentleman in the town of Bath. He even got married reportedly to his 14th wife. Imagine the scene, a man who spent years burning ships and scaring kings, now attending dinner parties and shaking hands with local politicians. But a tiger cannot change its stripes. Teach missed the sea, the power, and the thrill of the hunt. He soon went back to his old ways, using North Carolina's inlets as a base to ambush merchant ships. The neighboring colony of Virginia was watching. Governor Alexander Spotswood had seen enough. He decided that if North Carolina wouldn't stop Blackbeard, he would. The hunt was officially on. The era of the Pirate King was about to reach its violent conclusion. November 22, 1718, Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy had tracked Blackbeard to his favorite hiding spot, Ocracoke Inlet. Maynard didn't have a massive warship. He had two small sloops, light enough to navigate the shallow, treacherous sandbars where Blackbeard's ship was anchored. As the sun rose, Blackbeard realized he was cornered. But instead of fleeing, he raised a glass of wine to Maynard and shouted, "Damnation seize my soul if I give you quarters, or take any from you." The battle was fast and brutal. Blackbeard opened fire with his cannons, devastating one of Maynard's ships. The deck of the Jane was covered in blood. Thinking he had won, Blackbeard and his men boarded Maynard's vessel. But it was a trap. Maynard had hidden most of his soldiers below deck. As the pirates stepped onto the deck, the British soldiers swarmed out. It was chaos, smoke, steel, and the screams of dying men. Then, it happened. The two leaders met face to face. Maynard and Blackbeard engaged in a desperate duel. Maynard fired his pistol, hitting Teach, but the pirate didn't even flinch. They swung their swords until Maynard's blade snapped against Blackbeard's heavy cutlass. Just as Teach was about to deliver the killing blow, a British sailor slashed his throat from behind. Even then, the devil refused to die. Blackbeard continued to fight, surrounded by enemies. It took 5 gunshots and 20 severe sword wounds to finally bring him down. When they inspected his body, they were horrified. He had fought like a man possessed until his very last breath. Maynard cut off Blackbeard's head and tied it to the bowsprit of his ship as a trophy. The legend was dead, or so they thought. But the story didn't end with a severed head. As the sailors threw Blackbeard's headless body into the Atlantic, a chilling legend was born. Eyewitnesses claimed that the body didn't sink. Instead, it swam around the ship 3 times before disappearing into the dark depths. To this day, locals at Ocracoke Inlet claim to see a strange light moving under the water at night searching for its lost head. They call it Teach's Light. And then, there is the question that has haunted treasure hunters for 300 years. Where is the gold? Unlike other pirates, Blackbeard didn't leave a map. When asked about his treasure shortly before his death, he replied, "Only I and the devil know where it is, and the longest liver shall take all." Millions of dollars in Spanish gold and colonial loot have never been found. It could be buried in the sands of North Carolina, or hidden in a cave that time has forgotten. Edward Teach was only a pirate for about 2 years. But in that short time, he became more than a man. He became an icon of rebellion. He represents the ultimate freedom, the refusal to bow to kings, and the power of a self-made myth. He was a master of branding long before the word existed. So, was Blackbeard a monster, or just a man who played a part to survive in a brutal world? One thing is certain, as long as the wind blows across the Atlantic, the name of Blackbeard will never be forgotten. What do you think? Is his treasure still out there waiting to be found? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more legends of the high seas.